Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. There has been so much going on within the news over the last couple of weeks. Honestly, it's a little bit overwhelming. It feels like we're all just drinking from a fire hose of information, and the challenge with this is that when all of this stuff happens, the truth takes a long time to truly come out. And so I have purposely tried to wade out of the situation, but today we continue to see new information, and I figured I'd like to sit down and talk to you guys today about it, my thoughts on it, especially as it relates to what is currently going on in gaming. Now, this tweet has been making the rounds over on X this last couple days, but it is a callback to what we saw over the last 10 years with the original GamerGate. And Aurora writes, "It brings me so much joy to know that you feel like all of your favorite hobbies are being stripped away from you. You will never get what you think you had back, and that is hilarious." Now, for those of you who know, like, I wasn't really here for the original GamerGate, GamerGate 1.0, as it's known now as GamerGate 2.0, or the continuation of that continues to move forward. And so my knowledge of GamerGate originally was very rudimentary, just what I saw being reported on by various different websites and a handful of comments that I would see floating around online. And overall, my inner Catholic kicks in, and when it's all said and done, like, we're all equal in human dignity and having that level of respect for each other. The idea is like, no, we shouldn't be mean to people based off of their their physical or physicality, their gender, and so then that's kind of really where I fell. But over the course of the last decade, especially as it relates to everything that Doge is finding and discovering and pushing out there, all the money hatting, all the money laundering, all the corruption, everything, it really does frustrate me, and it calls into question all the claims that were made about GamerGate, the original, where I've heard it described, and now I'm more or less moving in that direction, that GamerGate was all about integrity in reporting. Gamers were tired of being lied to because of deceptive practices. Those practices have continued on throughout the day, but what we really saw was the first wave of identity politics within gaming, where your opinion, your view is validated actually by your value. So we went backwards. GamerGate in that mindset, identity politics in a mindset, is a regression of a culture, is a regression of I think everything that we should hold dear, because we shouldn't, our intrinsic, I think, is that whatever the term is, our physical values, my gingerness doesn't make me more or less valid, and my opinion more or less valid. It should always be kind of about our actions. And that's why, like, I fully support getting back into kind of a class politics system. How do we help the poor? How do we help create more opportunities, and using like economics and obviously as a real driving factor of it. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing here. But back to kind of gaming specifically, because seeing how much money, and in relation to some of the big multi-millions and billions of dollars that are kind of being funneled into different groups, I think when it comes down to the truth of all of this, like what is true, what isn't, as the money spigot gets turned off, what will really truly reveal itself and confirm or confirm one way or the other, positive or negative, that there is these industries that cannot self-sustain without the taxpayers subsidizing this exporting of information. Now, one thing I do want to say, like when all this is said and done, because I get obviously comments, I'm not afraid of sharing my opinions. I think it's more important to be truthful and tell you guys what I'm thinking, and then we can have that dialogue. But anytime anybody says anything online, with this video, with anything that I post, with anything that anybody else's posts, my words are then in your hands. So we all give up control when we speak in kind of a public space. So and the reason ends up being is that you guys hear it, and then you interpret these words based off of your worldview and your history and things like that, that on a one-to-one scale, like if we were hanging out in a bar, we could have an easier back and forth. So just note that, like, nothing I ever sit down to try and say is to offend you in a way, but it's to have just to encourage an open dialogue. But that is something that whenever anybody posts anything, it goes out and then it gets interpreted, it gets, you know, communicated in different ways. And that's just something that's always interesting to see. And that's kind of what really brings me back to my point with GamerGate and 1.0 and the truth ultimately taking forever to come out. It feels like it was just this massive psyop, that a lot of the things that we've been seeing have been tyranny of the minority. And this is, like, I think critical that I continue to maintain and will continue to fight that when it comes down to integrity and having integrity and being authentic and what we want to see within gaming, and this also kind of ties into GoonerGate, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. But all of that being said, it's interesting because gamers have woken up. We're rejecting more and more of this, this mess in mass, and you start to easily see and pick up these patterns with various different phrases repeated. I've long made the case that a lot of this ends up being more algorithmically driven. We saw this actually with RealPage. If you guys haven't been following that, there's a bunch of collusion that's been happening because it was algorithmically colluding. It wasn't that you and I were all getting together and price fixing. The algorithm did that for us. And I see that same kind of thing playing out within video game journalism. A lot of people are playing to the algorithm. And so people have shifted from making content that is authentic and real to making content for the algorithm, what's going to get them the most attention. And that's why you end up kind of seeing various different, things playing out. And that is what GamerGate, I think, was fighting against now when we see it. Now, obviously, there's going to be extremists and people who are outliers to the overall bigger population movement within anything. And so that's where a lot of people like to point to, like, the worst offenders. And so I try to always not do that when it comes especially to those on the left, is saying, like, okay, yes, we can find agreement. There's a lot of nuance we can have. There are some people that are completely lost, probably on both the right and left, and I end up finding them easily online. And so there are some people that can't be reasoned with and talked with, but those I still would say are the vast majority of people. And it's about trying to come together and have, like, real conversations, open dialogue, and just honesty when it comes to how we talk about and communicate about games. Now, all that being said, one of the other topics that within kind of this GamerGate ecosystem and sphere has been the concept of GoonerGate. Now, we talked about this a little bit on the last podcast, and essentially it was kind of broken up within the GamerGate side. You have the Crusaders versus the Gooners, and that is something that, as somebody who's Christian, I find it very interesting. This is where I've been muted and blocked from, and that's why I use the term woke right, while I don't like the term woke, because when we interpret it, it all depends on where you come from. If you think of it as that historical, kind of like black word that literally just keeps, people safe so they can know as they travel, like, I get it, but that word has been confiscated and it's been, the definition has been changed. And I think it's designed to be disruptive, but that's where, when the term that I'm using in this case, it's the cult right versus the cult left. Like, your side 100% on message. If you're not on board, that's going to be, then you're out of the team. And that's really what I thought GoonerGate kind of kicked off and highlighted, that within this movement that we're trying to fight for integrity and authenticity within gaming, that we see that this is a coalition that is not going to always agree on everything. Now, as a Catholic, as a Christian here, I don't go and play games that are very sexually explicit. I don't have a problem with violence, but I do have a problem with, like, sexuality in games. But that isn't me trying to force you to have that same kind of thing. And that's where I think that all kind of highlights that as a coalition, there are things that we all agree with, and we're all working on those things together, but we're going to find lots of disagreements. And as long as, like, we're not dictating that you have to be a part, you have to agree 100% or you're not a part of the team, then I think we'll be successful. That's one of the things that I felt like the left has really struggled with, is that because if you cannot adhere to 100% of the message, they kick you over into our team. And that's how our side has continued to win this entire kind of culture war so far. And 2025 is going to be truly, truly interesting to see how that plays out. But that being said, GamerGate seems like a massive psyop. The money is insane. And I think what we'll see, what will either prove or disprove it to a degree, is if all of a sudden all of these policies and articles and things like that, if they all dry up because they were being subsidized by the American taxpayer. It's wild to see all of this. It's going to be fun to see how it plays out. And I know that there's going to be, unfortunately, if you think about it, there's going to be some people who are getting hurt. And so I would say for anybody, my Christian brothers and sisters out there, this is the opportunity for us to pick up the slack and really truly try to help people out during this time, because some people, most likely, here's the truth, like if you're poor, you're going to get screwed. Like that's what's been happening, and that's what's been happening for the last 25 years. This inflation and this debt is a massive tax on the poor, and it sucks. And that's where, like, what we can do, especially, you know, like within the Christian culture, is to try and help bridge that gap. Because if government, you know, turns off some of the spigot, chances are there's going to be people who are going to be hurt and tied up into that, and there's nothing you can really truly do about it. But the answer just can't be, we can't just keep going off in this same direction. Anyway, guys, those are my thoughts. It's insane. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to have that conversation with you guys, and appreciate your time. So anyway, take care. God bless. I'll see you next time. Now, one of the things that we keep seeing fail. All right.